We begin this morning with that big announcement from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis that he plans to officially enter the race for the White House.
DeSantis will make the announcement at 6 p.m. Eastern during an event on Twitter Spaces with Twitter CEO Elon Musk. Those details were first reported by NBC News. Our Dasha Burns has the details.
NBC News is first to report that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will formally announce he is running for president alongside Twitter CEO Elon Musk. It's an unconventional approach and an unconventional ally for launching a bid for the White House. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis ready to jump in.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
And now NBC News learning exclusive details about that announcement, which will feature a surprise guest. DeSantis set to reveal his presidential run in a discussion with billionaire Twitter CEO Elon Musk that will be live streamed on Twitter Spaces, the site's platform for audio chats, according to 3 sources familiar with the plans. Musk first tweeted his support for DeSantis last year, and a source familiar with conversations between Musk and the governor's team tells NBC News Musk does not think Republican frontrunner former President Trump can win and believes DeSantis is the future.
My preference, and I think would be the preference of most Americans, is really to have someone fairly normal in office.
Musk saying he won't be making any endorsements.
I'm not at this time planning to endorse any particular candidate, but I am interested in X/Twitter being somewhat of a public town square.
The Florida governor will instantly become Mr. Trump's top rival.
Ron DeSantis, did anyone ever hear of DeSantis? The sanctimonious.
Their feud has been escalating. Just this weekend, DeSantis slamming Trump over his pandemic response.
We can never allow warp speed to Trump-informed consent in this country ever again.
Now, the Sunshine State ground zero in a growing Republican divide. Those backing Trump.
I would pick Trump.
You would pick Trump?
Trump has already proven what he could do.
And DeSantis. DeSantis versus Trump. Who would you pick?
If it was just those two?
Yeah.
I would pick DeSantis.
DeSantis all the way.
Why?
Well, I want a winner.
The event on Twitter Spaces will be followed by a gathering of donors and fundraisers here in Miami who will be raising money for the governor's campaign. And next week, after Memorial Day, he will take a big swing through those critical early states as an official candidate.
All right, Dasha, thank you. Let's bring in senior national politics reporter John Allen for a closer look at how the Republican primary field is now shaping up. Good morning, John. So let's start with DeSantis' choice to make this announcement during a discussion with Elon Musk. As far as we know, this is just going to be audio, no visuals here. I mean, what are the advantages of tying himself to Musk, or is this a risky strategy?
Joe, I think both are the case. There are some advantages and there are some risks. The big advantage, as Ron DeSantis has shown in the past, is he likes to have a heavyweight endorser come in and help him in a primary. In 2018, when he was running for the Republican nomination for governor of Florida, that big heavyweight that came in for him was Donald Trump. Turns out Donald Trump is not available this time around because Donald Trump is leading for that nomination for the presidency that Ron DeSantis would like. So helpful to DeSantis, in his view, to have somebody with a big name like Musk, and in addition, somebody who has a big following that overlaps with Donald Trump's following. There are a lot of people who are fans of both Trump and Musk. Perhaps DeSantis can pull a little bit away of those people away from Trump. The risk here, of course, is that Elon Musk outshines Ron DeSantis, and it makes DeSantis look a little bit smaller. And, of course, the possibility that DeSantis could be tied to some of the more controversial things that Elon Musk has said in the past, particularly in a general election. But, DeSantis will probably take that if he has to defend himself in a general election.
Also curious to see if this gets Trump to actually tweet again now that he's able to do that. So Musk is hosting the event, but says he isn't going to endorse any particular candidate for president just yet. So this is not an endorsement, Musk says. What do you make of that?
I make of it that Elon Musk is being coy. Certainly the DeSantis folks believe this is tantamount to an endorsement. I think anybody that sees Elon Musk appearing with Ron DeSantis will take that as an endorsement, particularly if Musk is not appearing with other candidates. And given what he's said in the past, both publicly and privately about this race. So, for all intents and purposes, it is an endorsement unless Musk goes out there and endorses someone else.
So DeSantis obviously trails former President Trump in the polls right now. A major group backing Trump has already attacked DeSantis, calling him out of touch for doing this announcement on Twitter. So what is realistically DeSantis's plan for trying to close the gap with the frontrunner?
I mean, I think the first thing that he's going to have to do is go after some of the Trump base that is with Trump. That's the overlap. That's where, there were certainly DeSantis fans before he was running against Trump, and probably still are, people who see him as the future or the next guy. He needs to pull them in. He needs to fight Donald Trump for Trump's voters. And I think part of joining Elon Musk on Twitter for this launch event is trying to angle at some of those very people who are both fans of Donald Trump's and of Ron DeSantis's.
We've certainly seen DeSantis' strategy leading up to now. After this announcement is made, what do we expect to see from him in the days that follow to try and build momentum?
Great question, Joe. The only thing we've learned so far is that he plans to go to early voting states after Memorial Day. We're not expecting a lot before Memorial Day other than a big donor conference that he has this week in Miami. But we have seen Ron DeSantis in these early states before. He's been to Iowa. He's been to New Hampshire. And so we'll just have to wait to see what it looks like under the official banner of a campaign.
John Allen, good to have you with us this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Turning now to South Carolina, where state senators have voted in favor of banning most abortions after an ultrasound detects a fetal heartbeat. Heartbeats are normally detected around 6 weeks, but for most people, that's before they even know they're pregnant. The new bill makes exceptions for fatal fetal anomalies, the patient's life and health, and rape or incest up to 12 weeks. The only 5 women senators in the state's Congress, 3 Republicans, 1 Democrat, and 1 independent, attempted to block the bill from passing by delivering scathing speeches on the floor. But nearly all of their Republican colleagues said the bill was necessary to reduce the number of abortions in the state. Republican Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey had this to say about the current state of abortions in South Carolina.
South Carolina has become the abortion capital of the Southeast. And there's no other way to say that.
The bill is now headed to the desk of Governor Henry McMaster. In a tweet, the South Carolina governor said, in part, "I look forward to signing this bill into law as soon as possible." NBC News legal analyst and former prosecutor Kristen Gibbons-Fedden joins us now to break down the implications of this latest abortion ban. Kristen, good morning. This ban reinstates a law that was enacted immediately after Roe versus Wade was overturned, but the state's highest court overturned the bill because it violated South Carolina's constitutional right to privacy. So how were state senators able to pass this new version?
Well, similar to how the anti-abortion proponents, after the Dobbs decision came down, kind of strategically awaited the shift in the Supreme Court, so did the South Carolina Republican leadership. You know, with the state Supreme Court's leadership under Justice Hearn, it was only a narrow strike down with the 3-2 vote that struck down that pretty much six week abortion bill. So now that Justice Hearn has had to retire or step down, with her retirement, Judge Gary Hill is the judge who's really much going to be reported to be a conservative. He's going to be tasked with the important task to reinterpret, if you will, the right to privacy under that state, under South Carolina's state constitution. And if he and his view diverges from Hearn's stance, it's going to increase the likelihood for the bill to be struck down. The bill to be upheld. And therefore, just by changing that shift in the court could result in a different interpretation of the law, which could cause this bill, which is very similar, to be upheld.
And this bill allows parents of a minor to file a civil suit against a doctor who performs an abortion. How does that compare to federal charges for doctors in that state? They could face those if they perform an abortion after the heartbeat is detected.
Well, it's interesting because physicians are increasingly being targeted by anti-abortion legislation. With this new bill, the doctors could face felony charges if they perform an abortion that fails to comply with those strict legal requirements. And that, with that particular charge, they could have a fine of up to $10,000 and a prison sentence of up to 2 years. And keep in mind, these are just doctors really trying to utilize their medical judgment as well as interpret the law. And the judge and those doctors could also face civil penalties penalties as well, Valerie. And if they perform it, there's other implications that they can do. But it really just impairs their ability to fully practice medicine, fully engage in their Hippocratic oath, and really help their patients.
All right. We appreciate the breakdown. Kristen Gibbons-Fedden, thanks so much.
There are new concerns this morning about the progress of those high-stakes negotiations to raise the debt ceiling. A Democratic official familiar with the talks tells NBC News that negotiations have hit a, quote, speed bump. White House officials and Republican congressional leaders had said they were moving closer to a deal to avert a potential first-ever default in the U.S. And according to a Democratic source familiar with the talks, the two sides are expected to meet again today. While they have called recent negotiations productive, one of Speaker McCarthy's negotiators says there is still a lot of work to do.
I don't think things are going well until the White House understands that they have a spending crisis, they have a tax crisis, and they have a debt crisis. We're not going to be able to make this deal.
We're joined by NBC News senior congressional reporter Scott Wong and NBC News Digital senior White House reporter Peter Nicholas. Good morning to both of you. Peter, let's start with you in this new reporting out this morning, the so-called speed bump, according to this Democratic official. We have to point out we've not gotten a response from the Speaker or his team about that claim, but what can you tell us about this?
Well, it doesn't look good right now. Both sides still are far apart. President Biden came back early, cut short his trip from Asia to participate in this, but we've not seen a breakthrough. And I think the sticking points are very traditional. Republicans want deep cuts in non-defense spending. President Biden is saying that he will accept some spending cuts, but nothing that's severe. And then there's a disagreement over taxes. Biden wants what he calls a balanced approach, where some taxes would go up for wealthy Americans. There would be a closing of some tax loopholes. Republicans are not willing to accept any tax increases. So the clock is ticking down. We only have about a week before the nation won't be able to pay its bills. And that, in turn, is going to set off some stock market gyrations that could cut into people's 401ks. So this is getting serious very quick. This is very serious.
Yeah, and Scott,
only getting worse.
Scott, because of that, I mean, there is so much pressure both on the president and House Speaker McCarthy to get a deal done, to avoid defaulting. Where do things stand right now from House Speaker McCarthy's perspective?
Well, Speaker McCarthy has laid out a number of red lines. Peter has mentioned a few of them. Speaker McCarthy has said no cuts to defense spending, pointing to the president's trip to Japan and meeting with the G7 on several national security issues related to China and other challenges in the region. Speaker McCarthy has also talked about no new taxes, and he's also ruled out to the dismay of perhaps several people on Capitol Hill, a short-term extension of the debt ceiling, that would take off this option if we were to be right up against the deadline of June 1st, just next week. And so this creates a very narrow, limited path. The White House and Capitol Hill Democrats, including Hakeem Jeffries, the House leader, have said they're open to freezing spending cuts. If McCarthy wants to talk about spending, then they have said that they are open to spending cuts. But that is a non-starter with Speaker McCarthy and House Republicans. And so, again, we have this impasse. The sticking point, the main sticking point, again, comes back to spending.
And McCarthy spoke about this yesterday. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about it.
It really comes down to this. Why are we in the problem we're in? People have spent too much money, and the Democrats want to even spend more than we spent last year. We're trying to condense everything in a short time frame. The House passed a bill and the Senate never passed one. So now it's more difficult because what else do you have to negotiate from a lot of different perspectives, but we can still finish in time.
So, Peter, we are getting a clearer picture of what each side is looking for. Let's break it down. Explain what some of the big sticking points are and just how far apart they really are right now.
Well, they seem quite far apart. I mentioned differences over spending and taxes. There are some areas where you can see maybe the path to a compromise. For example, on permanent reform, both sides seem open to the idea of loosening permit requirements that would boost energy infrastructure spending, and it would speed up those kinds of projects. So that's one possibility. They might be able to claw back some unspent COVID-19 money. So that would be, some billions of dollars in savings there. And it's possible that by cleaning up how the government pays for Medicare, for example, there might be some excess and some waste in government spending on certain Medicare programs where they might be able to forge a compromise. But there are quite a few differences that still remain, so we'll see.
Yeah, and Scott, here's the thing. There really isn't much time left because if there's a deal, Congress is going to need, 72 hours to try and prove it and review it and vote on it. Talk about this tight timeline here.
Exactly. We know that there are now 9 days left before the June 1st deadline that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has laid out, the date, the X date when the United States will run out of money to pay its bills and its debt obligations. Key GOP negotiators, including Garrett Graves, who was in the room with these White House officials, came out yesterday, talked to reporters, and said that really he thinks what's going to happen at this point is because of this impasse, they are going to probably send home House lawmakers later this week on Thursday, wrap up votes, send them home for the Memorial Day weekend, and then hopefully they can get a deal. They think there's still a narrow window where they can avoid default, perhaps get a deal by Monday, setting up a Tuesday vote. It hands the process off to the United States Senate, which is a whole nother story, but they do think at this point there is still a very, very narrow window in which to avoid default. We'll see what happens. It remains to be seen how this is all going to play out.
Going to be cutting it close no matter what. All right, Scott, Peter, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Writer E. Jean Carroll has asked a New York City judge to update her pending defamation lawsuit against former President Donald Trump. Carroll is requesting the addition of a new claim to the suit after Trump called her a, quote, whack job during a CNN town hall 2 weeks ago. The former president made that comment just one day after a jury found him liable for sexual abuse and defamation against Carroll, ordering him to pay her $5 million and $5 million. Turning to another New York City legal case regarding former President Trump, he appeared in court virtually yesterday regarding his pending criminal case. A Manhattan judge has set a trial date in that case for March 25th of next year, which coincides with primary season. In that case, Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 felony charges of falsifying business records.
This morning, flags are flying at half-staff across Texas, marking 1 year since one of the worst school shootings in American history.
1 year ago today, an 18-year-old gunman broke into an elementary school in Uvalde, killing 19 children and 2 teachers. And this morning, questions still remain over both the shooting and the police response. For many, the reminders of the tragedy are everywhere.
Not a moment goes by that I know we aren't confronted, aren't thinking about all this going on.
NBC News correspondent Jay Gray is in Uvalde this morning. Jay, good morning. We know the community really came together in the wake of this shooting. What is the mood like there today, and what are some of the events planned to mark 1 year?
Yeah, Joe, very somber, as you would expect. You could see by the sign just behind us. We're on the outskirts of the city right now, trying to give some space to the victims, family members on this difficult day. They're going to come together as a group a bit later and have asked for privacy after what's been a very public and very painful 12 months here. The city has no events planned, and they say they do that in deference to those family members and their privacy. There will be an event at an amphitheater here, a group gathering to release some butterflies to honor the victims. Mariachis will play in the town plaza at noon, and that's an area where a fountain is in the downtown section of this small town. It's a place where a makeshift memorial started just days after the attack, and it's really grown into a permanent marker at this point to honor the victims of the attack.
Jay, we know there are several investigations into both how the shooting happened and how the police responded. Where do those currently stand?
It's a great question, Valerie, and one that the family members continue to ask, and they say they're just not getting any answers on that. They and the mayor, in fact, here in Uvalde have said there's been enough time. The investigations need to end and some action needs to move forward. There is the investigation that's ongoing by the DA, and just in the last couple of weeks, she said she's not to the point where she's ready to move forward, that there's more work to be done. Then there's an independent investigation that was started by the city here. They hired a firm to do an independent investigation. They say that they're stuck because the DA won't turn over information from her investigation. What family members are saying is, we're waiting, have been suffering for a year, and still have really no solid information.
Jay, in the wake of this tragedy, there was also a flood of stricter gun reform bills that were filed in Texas. Quickly, though, not a lot of them passed, right?
Zero, Joe, to be real honest. And some of the family members here drove back and forth from Uvalde to Austin to testify for 11 straight weeks, some waiting 13 hours to share their grief and call for stricter gun laws. And again, none of it even made it to a debate on the full floor of the legislature.
All right, Jay Gray reporting from Uvalde. Jay, thank you so much.
This morning, we're learning more about the 19-year-old who police say purposely crashed a U-Haul truck near the White House. He's facing multiple charges. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has the latest details.
The dramatic crash caught on camera just a block from the White House. The driver ramming this U-Haul truck into security barricade before backing up and doing it again.
I heard this loud bang, and I looked behind, and there was this huge U-Haul truck just out of nowhere.
Chris Zaboyi was jogging when it all unfolded.
I thought maybe it was like a drunk driver or just an accident, and then it backed up and then rammed it again.
Tonight, the suspect, 19-year-old Cy Varsith Kandula from Chesterfield, Missouri, is in custody. According to court documents, Kandula says he rented the truck and drove directly to the White House. He told agents his goal was to, quote, get to the White House, seize power, and be put in charge of the nation, and that he would, quote, kill the president if that's what I have to do. And he praised Nazis. Authorities seized a Nazi flag with a swastika on it, seen on the ground outside the U-Haul. But no weapons or explosives were found inside the truck. Now he's expected to be charged with threatening to kill or harm a president, vice president, or family member, assault with a dangerous weapon, as well as reckless operation of a motor vehicle and trespassing. The incident is the latest threat to high-profile political figures and their families. From the violent attack on then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband to last summer's arrest of an armed man outside conservative Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home. That suspect now charged with attempted murder. Capitol Police say they opened more than 7,500 investigations of threats against lawmakers last year alone.
Hate, intolerance, and violence are part of a disturbing trend.
President Biden was inside the White House at the time of the crash. No one was harmed, fortunately. The suspect was in Superior Court Tuesday and will make his first appearance in federal court Wednesday. Back to you.
All right, Peter, thanks so much.
Now let's get a check on your morning news now. Weather and some storms could be coming your way.
For more on that, let's bring in meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning to you both. Great to see you. Yeah, we'll see those storms. We're going to see the umbrellas up for many of us across the country. We are stuck in a stormy pattern. You can see radar showing us that a lot of rain is falling in the Intermountain West, the central and southern plains, into the southeast along the Gulf Coast, and then a little bit of rain throughout the northern parts of the Great Lakes into the northern parts of the Northeast. We have a cold front that's moving through there. So we're going to be watching that as we go throughout the day. Those are the big weather stories. Lots of little fronts across the country. Really warm in the north. That's helping to aid some of the storms. Really warm in the south as well. Temperatures soaring into the 80s and 90s in portions of the southern plains. That's going to help to spark severe storms later on today. And then once again, we're watching heavy rain throughout portions of the southeast. We're looking at Florida especially, where we could see another 2 to 3 inches of rain, even up to 4 in some spots. So we're concerned about the severe threat once again this afternoon. We saw that on Monday. We saw it on Tuesday, pretty much in these same spots. We're going to see it once again later on this afternoon into the evening hours, expecting that daytime heating kind of to stir up those storms in portions of Colorado, New Mexico, into Texas, Oklahoma. Winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, so damaging winds. Also the chance of some hail. We had large hail yesterday on Monday, and we're going to expect that once again today. So rainfall rates, we're looking at a lot of rain that could cause some flash flooding in spots. Parts of the northern and western parts of Texas, especially Amarillo, you could see some heavy rainfall in addition to those severe storms. Same story as we head throughout Florida along the Gulf Coast, all those bright colors showing us where that heavy rain will be falling. And once again, we're going to see the chance for some flooding, even some flash flooding where you see that blue shading portions of the Intermountain West, the Southern Plains into the southeast. We are looking at the chance for flash flooding. We do want to mention this because we are thinking about our friends in Guam. Super Typhoon Mawar, we're looking at 15 miles northeast of Guam. So it's brushing the northern parts of Guam right now. Winds at 140 miles per hour. You guys, this is an historical storm here. We haven't seen a storm this big there or this strong since 2002. So it is 14 hours ahead in Guam, nighttime, and they're looking at a lot of power outages. We'll keep you posted on this storm. Back to you.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.